Hello, beautiful soul family. Rebecca here, your vibe mentor, bringing you another video on how to raise your vibration so you can live your best life. Let's talk today about shadow work. Well, actually, let me first say, I do mean soul family. If you are here and you regularly watch these videos, if you're new, welcome. Doesn't matter. If you're here, you're part of the soul family. So please do make sure you're subscribed. It's important for us to remain connected. And by subscribing to this channel, you are connecting with the energy of the people here, your soul family. We are all part of the New Earth Construction team. And we love to meet you and see your comments. And so we want to be connected with you and be part of the same family with you so that we can help support you on your journey of healing the unworthiness wounds so that you can step into your life purpose and make a living through it, which will help manifest heaven on earth. All right, so let's talk shadow work today. Shadow work can be a tricky subject. It's not always rainbows and sunshine and unicorns and lollipops, but it is very, very necessary, very impactful in accelerating your growth, your progress, and assisting in creating heaven on earth is necessary. Shadow work is necessary in order to assist in creating heaven on earth. So we have to understand what it is. We need to know how to do it. But I will also preface this conversation with, I am not a proponent of perpetual healing. I am not a proponent of getting stuck in the shadow. That yes, we need to become aware of what it is, learn to integrate it, learn to heal it, and then turn and look forward. Look at what you are creating, what you want to build, and use a vast majority of your focus and attention to create whatever dreams have been put on your heart, because that is how you will support creating the new earth. So know that I am not suggesting perpetual shadow work. I am not suggesting perpetual plant medicine sessions. That is not necessary from my perspective. That is not the path that I have chosen. If you do, great. It's not something that I will judge, but this is rather just the psychological and a little bit somatic process of what is the shadow, how do we identify it, how do we integrate it, and how do we move forward, most importantly. Okay, so in psychology, in analytical psychology to be specific, the shadow is an unconscious aspect of the personality that does not correspond with what the ego ideal is, and the ego tends to resist that part of it because we feel shame around it. Carl Jung initiated the conversation, or I should say was a big proponent around the conversation. It did start before him, but he identified again that the personality conflicts with the ego, and the ego does not want to identify as these aspects of the personality that are showing up, so they are then shunned, shamed, rejected, fractured, buried, repressed, however you want to define that. The shadow's characteristics are most commonly formed through shame. So either society, your culture, your family, whatever it may be, have indicated or communicated that there is a right and a wrong, a good and a bad, a should and a shouldn't. Don't should all over yourself. And we, especially as young children, but it can happen at any point in life, we determine that that part of us is wrong or bad. And so we disown it, essentially. Now, when a child feels shame about a part of themselves, that's when the shadow is created. And in trauma healing, in the trauma healing world, it is known that it is actually it stagnates the development of the person. So when that trauma happens, when the shaming happens, when the rejection and the fracturing happens, there's a part of us that is frozen in time in that childlike state. So if your initial trauma or shame happened when you were 2 or 5, there's a part of you that's going to be frozen in that state. And I don't know if you've ever noticed, but when you go back home to your mom and you feel like you revert to a childlike state, there's those traumas that are likely taking over. Or if you've ever found yourself being a really nice, easygoing, calm person most of the time, and then you get triggered, and then all of a sudden there's this other side of you. That is the fracturing that happened, that portion of you, and in its ability to deal with that trigger was frozen in time. Okay, so that is sort of the psychological aspect or perspective, I should say, of the shadow. When we look at more of a spiritual aspect, it's more encompassing. It's, in fact, all encompassing. It is not just the personality versus the ego. It can relate to many other aspects and even other lifetimes. But I tend to not be a big proponent of looking back. Again, like I said, looking forward is where our power is and where we create. And we are in a state of creating the new earth, heaven on earth, currently, right now. And so our sustained focus and intention towards the future is critically important. So going back and giving power and authority to past lives is, I find, detrimental. Now, there is a level of awareness that is necessary around our past lives and what we may be carrying with us, but we can solve them in this lifetime. We can end generational trauma by dealing with what is present here and now in this lifetime. So even though we may identify a shadow that doesn't make sense relative to what we've experienced in this lifetime, we just honor that it's there. And we honor that it may have come from another time, and that's okay. Sometimes when something feels really big or really old, or there just isn't a experience to point to say this is where it came from, that can mean it's from another lifetime, and that's enough. We don't need to know where it came from. I often find that I hear from other clients and even for myself that it's almost re-traumatizing to revisit in past life regressions the details and experiences, whereas all we need to know is how it's showing up here and now in order to be able to heal it and to move forward. So shadow work can be an attempt to uncover everything that we have hidden and the very parts of ourselves that we have disowned and rejected within our shadow self. So, what is the shadow? The shadow is any unseen or unacknowledged parts of ourselves. So, if you think about, for me, my example would be shyness, or I'm sorry, not shyness, sensitivity. That's interesting. Where did that come from? Because shyness became a coping mechanism. But it was sensitivity that many times people, and I'm sure many of you can relate, people would say, you're too sensitive, you're too soft, you're too naive. And I started to see that part of me as a problem, as a liability, as the thing that got me hurt over and over and over and over. And so I decided not to be sensitive anymore. I decided not to care. I decided to consciously numb out. I decided to bury that part of myself. There was even it was in the day and age, I guess you would say the 80s, where, being melancholy and the grunge era and being a little bit like F you was kind of the attitude. And so I saw that as that was the cool thing, that was the thing to do, and that became my replacement, right? I had that screw you attitude. The world sucks, everything sucks, it's okay to be down all the time, right? This is a cool thing to do, right? And that became my replacement. That was my coping mechanism for sensitivity, when really deep down inside I always cared. And after healing, you start to see sensitivity as an asset, as a beautiful gift and a healing modality, and not necessarily a liability, because I'm strong enough to discern and I know how to put up boundaries and I know how to protect that and keep it safe. So that would be one example of a shadow that I identified and some of the work that was done to heal it. So how do you identify your shadow? The way I first went about it was through identifying the parts of myself that were wrong, bad, rejected, broken, a liability, a problem, and starting to make friends with those. So the goal of shadow work is to integrate the shadow. We want to identify the parts of us that we believe are somehow bad and make friends with them. Another part of myself, this is where shyness came from. So complex trauma, feeling unsafe, unseen, unheard, uncared for, or unloved for an extended period of time at any point in your life will create something called complex trauma. If you look at COVID, we all felt unsafe for an extended period of time. So it is a global challenge. It is a psychologically proven, I don't want to say condition, but that's the word that came to mind, so we're going to go with it. Everybody's dealing with it. It sounds like a big bad thing. It's really not. So let's just understand this as a basic life skill. We can we can experience situations that create blockages. We'll call the trauma a blockage, that create a limiting belief that hold us back from our life purpose, our goals, whatever, wherever we want to go, the things that we can't seem to quite accomplish. And as part of that, there's coping mechanisms created because we have to somehow find a way to work around these traumas that are stuck in our body. So sensitivity, high sensitivity is a trauma response. I was very, very exuberant. I was excited. I was naive. But I was so excited for life and how I was going to change the world and the beautiful, amazing things I was going to do in it. And many people would say things like, "Oh, that'll fade. You'll become more realistic as you get older. You won't be so naive over time," right? And that taught me that that was a problem, that to be optimistic was a problem. Okay, sorry about that. Someone was at the door. So we'll cut out the in between there. So if it's a little jump, you know why. Carpet cleaner's here, so that's awesome. So, anyways, how do we address the shadow? How do we understand it? How do we see it? How do we find it? How do we start to recognize it? Because the brain in cognitive dissonance will do anything it can to get you from seeing the parts of yourself that it thinks is a problem or is going to hurt you. The brain's job is to keep you safe, and it thinks by helping you hide things, helping you stay away or keep from seeing things, it's helping you. And that's not actually the truth, but this is how we start to understand what the brain is doing and how we change that. So the first suggestion would be to look at how you project yourself or how you present yourself out into the world. Because how we want to see ourselves is an indication of how we may not actually truly be made. If we are presenting ourselves in a way that is inauthentic or somehow covers part of who we are, then that is an indication that that is something that we have not accepted or embraced, that we have identified as a problem or a liability. So look at how you see yourself and how you project yourself out into the world versus how you are at home or how you may be when you feel triggered, and look at the differences there to see what you can start to identify as a part of you that may be identified as a liability or labeled as a problem. The next is look at your mirrors, right? The reflections in others. So when we look at someone in our life who triggers us, who we judge, someone who bothers us, who makes us feel uncomfortable, they are our mirrors. They help us see the other parts of ourselves that we cannot see. We have put them so far back into our shadow that they are in our blind spot. But the beauty of the shadow is it will draw to it parts of us, reflections of us that help us see how we need to shift and change to embrace the shadow, to see those parts of ourselves that are hidden so that we can heal. Remembering that mirrors and triggers are gifts. That if something triggers you, that's another way to spot your shadow. If you feel an unusually animated or intensified response to a certain situation that wouldn't typically warrant that type of response, that is a trigger that is helping you see something in you that needs to be healed. Triggers are gifts. Also look at your patterns. For me, it was bad relationships. I kept drawing the same kind of man over and over and over and over. And I was not willing to see that part of myself that was not owning my power, that was giving my power away, that was self-sacrificing, the traumas that led me to believe that I was not able to ask for what I was worth or to have boundaries. All of those were parts of my shadow or trauma that needed to be healed that I could not see unless I had that reflection of negative relationships to continue to keep showing it to me. Right? Another thing that we can do is be very introspective. Raising your consciousness means becoming more conscious of yourself, your patterns, your shadows, your beliefs. So take the time to raise your consciousness, to observe yourself, to detach and step back and watch yourself. Watch your thoughts, watch your behaviors, watch your responses, watch your emotions. When emotions peak and rise, if there's a high level of intensity behind your response, there is a trigger there is a wound there is a shadow there that is asking for healing. And then look at your beliefs. What do you believe about the world? Do you believe the world is safe? Do you believe people are safe? Do you believe that there are good people out there? Your limiting beliefs are an indication of a trauma or a wound or shadow aspect that is asking to be healed. If you have any negative or limiting beliefs, that is a direct correlation to a shadow aspect. And some questions that you can ask yourself are, what do you judge? What do you judge out in the world? What do you judge in yourself? What do you judge in other people? And it goes back to the mirrors. I did a video on the Essene mirrors and how people are mirrors to us and help us see not only ourself and what we are rejecting within ourselves, but also out in the world and what we are rejecting and judging in others. It also may bring to your awareness aspects that you enjoy in others. If you judge something as negative, that's a shadow to address. But if you judge something as positive and still feel a sense of lack, that's also an opportunity for you to see that that is within you, that there are both positive and negative shadows, that there are parts of us that, if we admire someone because they're such a beautiful singer, we may have that ability, that creative aspect of us calling our attention to heal and come forth. If I, an example in my relationship, I was very disappointed to lose this person in my life because they were very hip and they loved cool music, and I loved that access to that world. And what I learned later was, even after losing that relationship, the thing that I admired about the relationship, that person, was available to me and already in me. And I became, more interested in cultivating my own collection of really cool music that I absolutely love, right? Another thing you can ask yourself is, what do you dislike? So again, similar to judging, if you dislike something in someone or in yourself, that is an aspect that is calling your attention for healing. And again, always the goal is to integrate our shadow so that we can become whole and complete. Another question that you can ask yourself is, what do you fear? Because your greatest breakthrough is on the other side of your greatest fear. And if we can move forward headlong into the fear, I can assure you progress in your life on a very fast pace. Again, it's also really important to remember that you are made perfectly imperfect for a purpose. You are made with intention. You are not an accident. You are not happenstance. This is not a coincidence. That everything about you was made for supporting your purpose. That there are no aspects of you that are bad or wrong or broken. That you were made with intention for a specific thing here on earth. That you are a critical piece of the whole, a collective piece of the puzzle. And to know that these parts of ourselves, these shadows that we identify as a liability or a problem, they actually were given to you for a reason. That they may support part of your purpose, they may support part of your healing journey, they may support part of making you stronger. And it's really up to us to embrace and integrate all of that as we call back these broken parts of ourselves. We integrate them, we become whole again. We relieve ourselves of the energy that is necessary for managing these traumas or hiding these shadows. Dancing through life with a mask on requires a lot of energy, and as we free ourselves up to be authentically who we were created to be, we have massive amounts of energy for creating healthy, positive, resourceful aspects to heaven on earth, right? So notice that a fracturing happens when we disown a part of ourselves. And so the goal is integration and wholeness again. We want to reclaim those lost parts of ourselves so that we can be directed in one direction, right? So if you think about the strength of a laser versus the power of a light bulb, a laser focused, all of the energy, all of the light is moving in one direction, versus a light bulb, it's very diffused because the light goes in all directions. So if all of your energy is going to managing all of these different parts of you that are fractured and outside of you and rejected and not able to be integrated, then your energy is diffused. If you are whole and complete again, everything is succinct, healed, integrated, you are a laser. And you are able to move in one direction without having to worry about all of these ancillary parts of you that you have to hide or protect. You see what I'm saying here? So self-love, self-acceptance, acceptance of all that you are, all that you are, and all that you were created to be is the name of the game. To love the parts of you that you originally thought were a problem. That, touching on my story earlier, that to be gregarious was a problem, so I became shy or a little bit pissed off. And then to realize and to come back and say, no, actually, I'm not shy. I'm not super passive. I am pretty easygoing unless we hit a boundary, and then there's going to be some firmness there. But at the same time, to realize that not only am I easygoing, I'm also firm. Not only am I gregarious, I'm also serious. That there are parts of us that we have chosen, maybe one or the other, that can come together and be the two sides of one coin. That we can embrace both aspects of that and realize that there are archetypes within us, that I can call on the lover when it is necessary. I can call on the jokester when it's necessary. I can call on the queen when it is necessary. And that it doesn't require a sacrificing of the other part of me, that all parts have a seat at the table. All right, carpet cleaning's happening, so I'm going to wrap this up. Just remember, no judgment, no amount of negativity is ever helpful. Look at that trauma voice and do take the time and effort to identify your trauma. Check out all of my videos, tons of information on how to see your trauma, how to heal it, how to use something called brain spotting to get that trauma up and out of the body and relieve all of your energy so that you can move forward like a laser towards creating heaven on earth. All right, with that, I will close. I love you guys very much. Please do make sure you like, subscribe, and share. A little emoji comment is super helpful for the YouTube algorithm. Otherwise, click this button to subscribe, or this video is customized to your preferences. All right, take care, my friends. Namaste.